Welcome to another episode of Reptile Australian Reptile Q&A with myself, Darren Boswell, Marty Baja. I butchered that. Did I get it? I got it. And Mr. Joe Ball, the infamous Mr. Joe Ball. Welcome, lads.
How you going?
Very good.
Hello. Where's Brent? We lost him.
Yeah, I'll add him in as soon as I see him pop up on the radar. Yeah,
He's going to get green cordial.
He probably did go and get his green cordial. So welcome, guys, for another episode. And Darren, welcome to the cast of the Reptile Q&A as well.
Thank you.
So we might just hang tight and just say hello. Or there's a few people saying hi. Daniel Boswell, g'day. I'm just making sure that the frames are right, the frame rates. I think we might be dropping a little bit of, getting a bit, not. We should be okay. We should be okay. Please let us know if the sound's okay or if the video's frozen up so we can do something about it. We don't know if you guys don't tell us. And yes, a few people in Colin Ray. Can you guys see the comments, Joe?
Oh, I can see Colin just wrote something. Hello, guys.
Yes, yeah, I can see the Colin Ray thing, but it's got like a private chat thing that blocks it off a bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot that. So I'm the only.
You can move your screen up, Joe.
Okay, it should be all right. So just waiting on Brent, and then we'll kick off. We could start. So on tonight's show, I really just want to touch on the different legislation. Now to start with reptile keeping in Australia. So everybody's saying that the sound's all good and the visuals are all good. So how do you start to keep reptiles in Australia? And I think I've kept reptiles in a few places where I've lived across the world, and Australia's unique in the way that that there's a lot of legislation involved in any form of animal keeping in this country. I'm not so sure about the birds, but Joe, we'll have a quick touch on that a little bit later on. But every state's got its own legislation. There's no federal. I don't think there's a federal body that oversees any of the local wildlife laws. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. It's nothing that I'm familiar with. But then, every state's unique. And in some states you can keep certain animals, in other states you can't keep certain animals. And I'm still not sure. I think South Australia has got one of the better lists. So I think let's start with Darren. He's new to the show. So just a rough overview of what you guys, how you guys go about getting a license. So when you want to, so if you're a youngster and you suddenly fall in love with blue tongues or carpet pythons or Antaresia, I mean, what's the normal process? How do you start and where do you go and who do you contact to get a license in South Australia?
Yeah, so now it's the Department of Environment, Water and Natural Resources.
Yep.
And you just go to their website. There's we've got a list of basic animals which you don't need to have a permit to keep those animals. However, you still can't go and get them from the wild. So it needs to be sourced from a legal source, pet shop, breeder, etc. And any of those listed animals, you can have one of those without a permit. Where it gets a little bit complicated is when you decide that you want to move that animal on, you then need to apply for a permit to be able to transfer it to somebody else.
Yeah,
which can complicate things when people get into a reptile or they buy a reptile for their son or their daughter and they lose interest. They find it problematic then moving the animal on. Well, not so much problematic, but then they're going to incur some cost and a bit of administrative burden to get a permit in order to move that animal on.
All right. And tell me, what are you guys allowed to keep on your list? Wasn't it revised slightly last year or the year before that?
Yeah, the schedules were revised. Probably one of the bigger changes was they put rough scale pythons onto a basic permit, whereas they were on specialist.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there was a lot of people that wanted to keep rough scale pythons, but didn't want to go through or all the administrative hassle of getting the specialist permit. So that was a real positive step. And when you look at the amount of them that are bred and the numbers that they're bred in around the country, it just made sense. But some of the some like green pythons, the recent listing of Owen-Pelly pythons, they're specialist. Pygmy pythons are still specialist, and that may be tied to that they are quite hard to get feeding if you're breeding them. But from a python perspective, which is mainly what I look at, so I don't keep any venomous or anything anymore.
Tell me, and is there a cap on? So I'm assuming there's different tiers of licenses in South Australia.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there's specialists, and then you've got your commercial permits that your commercial dealers and pet shops, etc., have to have. And obviously, the cost and the administrative burden goes up with that. As a specialist keeper, we recently, as part of those changes, we used to have to submit 2 returns every year. So we used to have to submit one at the end of February and another one at the end of June. Now we only have to do the 1 return at the end of June.
All right,
and there's a portal being set up online as well, so that you'll have an actual online record book. At the moment, it's still manual. They tried to go live with that and had a few problems, so that's still being worked through. But going forward, we'll have an online portal that we'll log into, and we can do our stock returns via there. As we're hatching out babies, and we'd normally write them into a record book, we can actually go on there and update it in real time electronically.
Oh, that's all right. And are there certain caps on the amount of animals that you're allowed to keep?
That's not something I've really looked into. I'm not sure. I don't think there is.
All right.
I don't think there is.
There's Brent's, and let me just. There we go.
Here he is. Cottage.
He's got his drink. Okay, so now, so we were just having. Thanks for joining us, Brent. Everybody's familiar with Brent around here. Thank you, Darren. That's a quick touch on the South Australian legislation. Joe, can you just run through the approach to get a license and what's involved in getting your first reptile in Queensland, please, mate?
It's fairly simple. You've only got to hop online. I think it's des.gov.au now. It's a while ago since I did mine, but it's a pretty straightforward process. You've just got to apply online, and within 24 hours, you'll get your license. I think it's around the $80 mark. I haven't renewed mine for a couple of years. I think it's changed. When I did mine, it was $40, $50. I think it's gone up a bit now, but it's largely nominal fee and a very quick turnaround. And I don't know how much more you want me to add.
Is there any form of testing involved with? Do you have to do a test?
There's no real means testing on it at all. I don't think, from when I did it, which I find curious, but I'm not sure exactly what it's like now. But I don't think there's any real means testing on it at all.
Would you think that would benefit people if they had to have like a theory test or something? I mean, it's tough to figure out what to put in a syllabus like that, in a test like that. But would it be beneficial to somebody to do a little test to just get sort of a background, even if it's a government compiled document that you need to sort of study on before you do the license? Do you think there might be a benefit in that?
I'm not sure. I just know that it's a very, very wide demographic that approach me for reptiles. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure that demographic should be that wide.
Oh, okay. All right.
And that's all I can say, because that's that's what I see.
Yeah,
when people hit me up for reptiles with reptile licenses, and you think,
Tell me now, you were very involved with with the legislation that changed up in Queensland. Was it last year or the year before?
I suppose it's a couple of years ago now. Yeah.
And how did, and just there were a few changes involved with that. So there are different category licenses now, and there is I stand corrected if I say there is a breeder's license now or commercial license.
Yeah, well, they split. It's always been a fairly loose license up here in Queensland in regard to the the different species that you can hold and the numbers of animals that you can hold, and that largely hasn't changed. What has changed is that they've sort of split it into sort of class 1 and class 2 reptiles, and and sort of place the numbers within that, so that you have to pay a little bit more to be able to hold X amount of this and X amount of that. But still, as long as you'll get your wallet out to the degree of a few $100, you can keep basically everything on the list as before up here in Queensland. And the cap, I believe, I think it's 400, which is a pretty big number. I mean, I sit comfortably below that, so you know, just if you've got more than 400 reptiles, like, I don't know, so it's fairly easy to get on with it up here in Queensland and do whatever you want to do, you know.
Okay.
There's some info there from WA just come up in the comments.
Yeah, so I'm going to just put this up, and I just want to see what the layout looks like if this goes on there. So I'm going to just make you smaller, so it covers your face. So what I'll do is I'll read what the information says. Just so out of WA, Scott Ryan says, "G'day boys, just a bit of info from WA. There's only 2 categories: Category B and Category C. Category C governs the venomous animals, large monitors and colubrids. The rest is under Category B. Category B license is $30 for a year. Category C around $45. Category C license, you need to get a council approval to keep such reps. Then an inspection is required from parks." Okay, so that's a short rundown from. Thanks for that, Scott Ryan. Yeah, we don't have a representative from WA. That's why I picked the guys here tonight, so that we've got a little bit of input from all the states. So, Marty, for Victoria, can you give us a little rundown just about the licensing requirements and who you need to approach for a license in Victoria, please, mate?
Is it the DH? Oh, well, I know that DELPWP or something. I can't remember. It's been a while since I applied. Obviously, we do our returns to them, but they're the same as them. You can apply, I think, print out the form, apply, and send it in. I think in Victoria, everything's by mail, still snail mail. So they have been looking at online for record keeping for years now. To fruition, so it's a bit of a slow process.
Tell me what, but you wouldn't have had to apply for a few years for a license. So so I know from when I was keeping, you got your basic license and you've got the basic license, your advanced license, demonstrator's license, commercial license, a couple of categories of commercial licenses.
All it is putting your hand in your pocket. So, you know, the basic license obviously is a bit cheaper. Advanced to keep a bit, a couple of extra animals and a crocodile, I think.
Yeah.
At one stage, but yeah, I've got to do it all again coming to Queensland. So I'm assuming that I have to apply for an export permit for all my animals.
Yeah.
Apply through Queensland for an import permit.
Ugh.
And apply for a new. It's going to be interesting.
And I wonder if you need, because it's funny like that though. You'll have to have a house address in Queensland before you take the animals up there. Otherwise, they won't issue you an export permit. So it's a mission, isn't it?
Yeah, they'll want to know what address they're going to.
Yeah. I'm assuming I'm going to have 2 licenses at once. So so that's going to be the interesting part, because I did it wrong when I came back to Melbourne. I actually only had 1 snake when I moved back here, and I just drove down with the snake.
Let me just quickly find out, is everybody still happy with the sound quality? And so at least we're running so far so good. Touch wood. Brent, please give us just a rundown of your legislation down up in New South Wales, please, mate.
New South Wales, very simple, mostly online. You can basically walk into your pet store or do it on your internet and get your license instantly online. And that can be from a companion license for one of each category, so one turtle or one lizard, one python, and then straight into your R1, which is your basic license that you can keep and breed whatever you want. Cheap, $55 or something for 2 years. Advanced license from there, your R2, which keeps you to some of the restricted stuff, rough scales, green trees, if you can have lacies, that sort of thing. And from there, obviously more money again, but you go to R3 is the first step of VENS, and that's the first place you'll need to actually do some sort of course. So you'll go into a one-day VEN handling course, and you're in. And then there's only R4 and R5, which is just advanced series of those where more restricted animals to stop people getting too far up the ladder too fast.
Do you guys know if I know in Victoria you can get a demonstrator for Mari? Just correct me if I'm wrong. If you get a demonstrator's license, you need to do a test for it, like a.
I've never looked into it. It's not something that's been on my radar, so I wouldn't have a clue.
So if there's anybody watching, I think in Victoria, I think in Queensland, to keep venomous snakes, do you need to do some form of? Do you need to get Do you need to just pay more, or how does it work in Queensland, Joe?
You do pay more, but there is a means testing on that too. I'm not exactly sure what it is now, but there is you need a couple of references.
Yeah,
I think there's a little bit more to it than that, but I'm not a ven keeper, so I know a few ven keepers, but I do know that there is 2 or 3 extra hoops to jump through. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a pretty. So I assume the first point of call would be to go onto the internet and basically in your area, Thankfully, Google would find the relevant government department. If you type in a license or wildlife licensing wherever you are, Google should give you the link straight to where you need to apply for the license. And from what it's from how it is, most of all of your you can apply online for. Yes, you don't need in Victoria. I know we have to get a hard copy sent out in the mail, or we print it out and then we send it in. And I think I think we need to get it witnessed by the police or something as well. I don't know if they changed that. That might have changed over time, because it's been a while. And every time every 4 years or so, they like to rebrand themselves in Victoria. I'm not sure if it's the same where you guys are.
Yeah, it changes weekly up here too, the name. Definitely.
It's sometimes as simple as let's just put a sticker on an old government envelope, like a new sticker, a new logo. It's crazy how it works,
I'd like to add something else though, Menis. But after we just discussed New South Wales and so on. That there was an amount of collaboration between New South Wales and Queensland, and I believe I know that both Queensland and New South Wales licenses now are actually a bird and reptile license. So in applying for one, you actually apply for both. So
that's the same as us.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What did you say, Marty?
I think that's the same as us as well. Don't we? We're allowed to keep birds and stuff like that on the same license.
Yeah. It's a native fauna license.
Yeah, native fauna. That's right.
Yeah.
So we'll so you don't go and look for you don't necessarily put in a snake keeping license. You put a native.
Yeah, that's right. That's why it's key. That's why it's key to know that. Yeah, it's and when you're looking on these government websites, that's how they're looking at it, because all these animals are viewed as property of the Crown, and it's all native fauna. And so that's actually what the mindset you have to get yourself in when you're A, looking at these licenses, and B, if you ever have the pleasure of dealing with people at government level, that's the mindset,
It is a very pleasurable experience to deal with government officials. I can second you on that, Joe. Let me just say, there's Nick Smith said here, somebody asked a question about VENS. So Nick Smith says, for VENS, you need a first aid certificate, handling course completion, references which can be obtained by the course instructors, and answer questions that are asked by the department. I have an experience in-home inspection. So it seems like the higher up you go with what you keep. So venomous keepers should be should be willing and knowing that the department would probably come in for an inspection. You know, they take that
Yeah.
stuff very serious. You know.
Yeah, here in South Australia, with the requirements with Venomous have changed a fair bit to when I was keeping Venomous.
Yeah.
I only had to supply a couple of references, and that was it. I got it. Now you need the references. You need to have done the handling course. You need to have done senior first aid. You need to provide photographs or designs of your enclosures and explain how you're going to secure those enclosures and
Yeah.
who is going to have access to the keys to those enclosures as well. So it's, quite rightly so. It's a lot stricter now.
Yeah, I think in Victoria is the same. You need to have everything needs to be locked up. If it's venomous snakes, it needs to be behind a lock. And yeah, although you very seldom hear people get fined for having venomous without locks and not. They usually give you a warning, and then they'll come back and do a follow up inspection. And the best thing to do with the government is to just do what you do. You just do the right thing, and they stay off your back. That seems to be the standard thing with any government, So, Joe, did they add marsupials? That's something I know. Michelle Rumler said that in Victoria you can keep marsupials as well. Did they ever? I know you guys were pushing for marsupials in Queensland. Did they ever budge on that?
No, we tried to get mammals,
Yeah,
which obviously includes marsupials, and they wouldn't give us nothing.
really.
I mean, you've got a few limited species down there and so on, but yeah, we tried to get some kind of sort of similarity to the other states, but they wouldn't budge on it at all. They also wouldn't give us any exempt stuff either. Like you guys have got, for instance, blue tongues are exempt down there. We tried to push for a couple of species, but they wouldn't look at it. Which we sort of challenged that. When you look at the bird license, which is what both of them are, you can keep some of the common species of birds up here without a license, but yet you can't keep any reptiles without completing all the paperwork.
It's crazy.
So,
Brent, are you allowed to keep marsupials? Sorry, talking about it's really reptile, but I mean, I thought it's interesting to compare notes. Marsupials in New South Wales, are you allowed to keep them?
Nothing yet. That was part of the big plan that they had in place, which fell apart and got thrown out. That they were talking 4 or 5 species, and yeah, it all fell apart. Back to the drawing board.
That's exactly when I say there was some parallels between Queensland and New South Wales. They put everything on the table, and then they just took it all away again.
Change of government, all gone.
Change of government. I can't be bothered to do that. Let's just leave it how it was. Okay, we'll give them this and that, which basically amounted to nothing, and then walked away. At least they didn't move us backwards, but there you go.
There's quite a bit of chatter here in the chat. I haven't seen it this busy in a while. So Josh Fastuka says under 18s in Victoria have to have some sort of reference or handling course for vens in Vic as well. Yeah, I know. If you're under 15, and even under 15, you need like permission from your parents to apply for a license in Victoria, and they're even stubborn to sort out to issue licenses like that. So let me just make sure that we're not missing something here. So it's pretty straightforward. There's money involved. Like any government department. It's like keeping a dog. It's you just have to make sure every year you pay your license fee. And we've got a license book. I don't know what you still got the forms that you fill out in in Queensland, Joe, or is it online? Everything online?
Yeah, everything's online, but if you're still on your old license, you've still got all the old books and everything, which I've still got. My license doesn't expire. My old license doesn't expire for another couple of years, but they do have an online system. But I don't know how well they're going to go to get everybody over onto that, because when you think of a good friend of mine, Peter Krause there, how are you going to get somebody like that to move from paperwork when he's in his mid-80s, Yeah. So I don't know. I think that there'll always be a paper format as well as an internet format.
It's funny though, coming from governments that push for the same type of paperless system as well. That they still insist on everything to be on hard copy in
It's
triple.
ridiculous, right?
It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah,
It's so counterproductive, isn't it?
yeah.
Brett Moy asked a question here to Joe as well. Did you get any wins with the expos up in Queensland, Joe?
No,
Bloody hell.
no.
That's crazy. You guys would do so well up there with expos every year. I mean, it's just, it's
The expos can be done, but under the same format. And what the problem is, it falls down to the fact that we can't sell at the expos
yeah.
because
Which is ridiculous.
the licensing structure is such that only pet shops can sell reptiles, and that's a totally different list again. So for a hobbyist to walk into an expo and just sell reptiles, it totally is against the structure of the system. I'm sure a pet shop could potentially rock up to an expo with its reptiles, but that's not what Brett's asking, and that, whilst that seems a little bit off topic for what Brett's asking, that's actually what holds it back, because all you can do is turn up and have a look. You can't actually. Little Billy can't walk home with his new lizard, can he? You know what I mean? He can only have a look. He's got to go home again, and that will always hold the Queensland Expos back.
And it's so silly, It's like, I mean, even if you were just allowed to sell the basic stuff like blue tongues and short neck turtles and bearded dragons, like there's all these animals that are in their thousands in Australia in captivity, and
that's key, really. If you could sell those, that's all that matters, isn't it? At the end of the day, because they're the entry level reptiles, and an expo, if you can sell entry level reptiles, at the end of the day, nobody's coming to buy a $5,000 animal necessarily at an expo, but people do like to be able to walk home with something that's basic,
Hey Marty, hold up that book up to the camera, and what I'll increase the size of the video, so your picture, so people can see. So that's what a protected wildlife record book looks like in Victoria. High tech stuff, really.
It might have a picture of you inside the front cover of there too. They should say.
Very high tech stuff in Victoria, and it. I remember.
I hate this. I hate it because I've got the worst handwriting. I never got my pen license, so I'm writing illegally.
And that's the key. It always has doctor's handwriting.
I've got the worst.
Yeah. I don't, but I do in that.
And my excuse is the box of the I'm just really bad.
The silly thing is though, about what was it? When did I see you? When did you come and do a talk in Victoria, Joe? You came to one of the expos. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago.
It's probably longer ago than that. Would have been 2012.
Yeah, and they were no, there was one after that as well, because
I did. Yeah, that was
that time. Yeah,
2016, 17.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a debacle, but in any case,
that was nothing.
Yeah. So, but I remember they had these, and this is not. I don't want to beat down the government here on this show, but I think it's fair to expose the flaws in the system. I think they had this big stand and all these brochures, and they were introducing the owls. It's the online system that they were introducing, and people were going to, everybody was interested, and they had real busy the whole day. It's literally 5 years later, and that system is still nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
They've done everything else around that. They've built new buildings just down the road from where I live, and you go, it can't be that. I know Michelle Rumler is saying that she's trying to look at getting something online, but it would be so easy to do some form of spreadsheet because our record books are crazy, because you have to put clutches in. If your animals lay eggs, you have to put right in the book how many eggs there were. Then you need to do your maths and your subtractions off the numbers, and if there were dead eggs, you need to actually write in how many eggs were dead and
count for the ones you lost during incubation.
Died. And at the end of the day, if you've got, it's impossible. If you're sitting on 300 or 400 animals, it's so easy to screw up with those numbers. And if you're not meticulous with those I mean, I guess that's part of the thing. You know, they say it's a privilege to keep reptiles in Australia, you know, and as Joe said so eloquently, you know, it's property of the crown, you know. Like, you go, okay, you can have your bloody blue tongue, you know, but in what other country is there that much paperwork involved in just keeping, you know, a lot of people just keep a couple of bearded dragon paper, you know, record books and submissions and for beardies, you know, it just doesn't make sense. But let's move on. That's my
One of the other things that I've noted just from some of the numbers the guys were quoting in terms of the cost of their permit, in an advanced permit or specialist permit here in South Australia is $130 a year.
Yeah.
But we don't pay for any import or export permits. So when we need to do that, we just submit the forms and they're processed for free. Whereas I know a lot of you guys have to pay for them, yeah?
No,
We
in
get
Victoria,
robbed.
ours are free, import and export.
Okay.
And you, Brent?
New South Wales, $27.11 for every single one.
Do
It shits me.
you factor that into your sales price or do you?
Yeah, what can you do? You can't. You know, I charge $100 to freight an animal. Qantas takes 80 something of it. $27 for a export permit, and then I got to drive 3.5 hours and $25 in tolls to freight an animal. You know, so
And
people
at the end
often.
of the day,
What'd you say, Darren?
at the end of the day, what's an extra $27 for a Xanthic Jag Chimera? You know,
I'll just put it out. I'll just put it out there and say that over 50% of the reptiles that go into New South Wales don't have an import permit done for them.
For sure, I wouldn't doubt it. I know lots of people that I export paperwork to, and I sell stuff to Queensland, and they're supposed to send me paperwork to go back with the animal, and it never happens. You know, like I reckon I get 10% of people that ever send me paperwork from their end to complete. So it's happening a lot. They don't link it up with Qantas to work out what flies out. So it's a mess.
There's hang on. There's this Scott Ryan's got a lot to say about the export. So
deport either not. I'll say that before Scott comes on.
Western Australia, you pay for export and import $30. I remember it used to be a lot more. WA used to be ridiculous to get animals out. I think I paid for Imbricata to come out. I think I paid $150.
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
You're right. That's
per
why
animal.
You needed to do half a dozen at a time because it was 150. I think it's like 180 actually, man. It's anyway. It was that kind of number, yeah.
And
So
then
per shipment, not per animal.
And that was
exactly, yeah.
Yes, and then the added weight. So if you had to do those volumes, the sheer size of the package used to, man, it was hundreds of dollars to get the animals out, and then once they're out, I don't know, there wasn't really what was really, I mean, that's a totally different discussion, but there was a lot of nice Western Australian animals that was available at some stage, but the majority of those things were wild caught as well.
I was going to say, it'd be a big bag full of wild caught animals from a legitimate collector, and you'd have to pay $180, and you'd need to make sure you got a few because wild caught stuff didn't do so well.
But then you understand why some individuals got caught climbing on the planes there with suitcases full of animals coming to illegally to eastern side of Australia. Okay? Yeah. So
and they wonder why it happened. Yeah.
Yes. So let me just see here what else is here. So there's a lot of discussion here tonight. It's something that people are very passionate about, especially long-term reptile keepers. So it's very important to know that when you start, and don't just go out into the bush and catch and I'm sure there's a lot of kids out there that start with a wild caught blue tongue or a water dragon or in Victoria, in Victoria, I reckon some people start with venomous snakes because we don't have pythons cruising around outdoors. A lot of people I've spoken to in Victoria said they started with red-bellied black snakes, just because they couldn't find anything else down here. So it's important to so when we start, we get the permits, the first thing that you need to find. And then the second thing that we can talk about after. So I need to make a shout out to Exoterra that's sponsoring the show tonight. And what I'll do is I'll quickly we'll go into the types of animals and how to go about finding somebody where you can buy a captive bred. We'll go into captive bred versus wild caught after this, and then the right way and process of finding the right people to get you into the hobby the right way. So I'll quickly run the little ad for the Exoterra terrariums, and then we'll be back after about 3 minutes.
Exoterra terrariums are durable, water-resistant, full-glass terrariums, allowing optimal viewing and monitoring. Exoterra terrariums are also extremely versatile in use. When set up as a desert terrarium, it retains heat properly, so cooler and warmer areas can be created. In tropical setups, the humidity is easily regulated up to 100% RH without damaging the terrarium. The extra high front panel allows for deep layers of substrate. This stimulates the natural digging and burrowing behavior of reptiles and amphibians, which many species practice to regulate their body temperature. The waterproof base can be used to create a water feature, as it holds water up to the ventilation strip. Every terrarium is tested for leaks. The front and side panels of the terrarium provide room for glass-mounted decor, such as the Exoterra Reptile Den or Crystal Cave. The reliable locking system keeps animals inside, while the optional combination lock prevents children or pets from accessing the terrarium. The patented dual ventilation system keeps the front glass free of condensation for superior viewing, even in humid conditions. The dual ventilation system also creates a natural upward flow of air to ensure optimal and healthy conditions. Excess heat is ventilated through the full screen top. The full screen top is completely removable for easy access and can be secured using the 4 pivoting locks at the sides. It allows maximum penetration of visible light, ultraviolet and infrared radiation. The top also has built-in closable inlets to securely run wires and tubing inside the terrarium without small reptiles and feeder insects escaping. Exoterra terrariums have deeper dimensions than most others, resulting in extended ground surface. This feature allows for desert and ground-dwelling reptiles and amphibians to thrive and offers better landscaping possibilities in order to create a more natural environment. The raised bottom glass panel of the terrarium facilitates the mounting of a substrate heater or heat cable. Optimal hot and cold spots are ensured due to good ventilation. The dual front opening doors allow easy access for maintenance, misting and feeding. One door can be kept closed at all times to prevent swift reptiles or feeder insects from escaping. Dual doors also help in retaining heat and humidity in the terrarium. On top of this, pivoting doors don't get jammed by sand and other debris, as sliding doors often do. The Exoterra terrarium comes in more than 15 sizes and can be equipped with a wide range of accessories in order to help you build the perfect natural environment for your reptiles, amphibians, and invertebrates.
Okay, and we're back. That man has a very masculine voice. Did you hear?
It was like, thanks for the ad, Sir David.
At the Exoterra terrarium. Yeah,
It was Liam Nielsen. I've got some set of skills.
I was actually quite surprised. I know Exoterra Australia sent me the link and just said, look, maybe you can play this song for this video. I just had a quick look through it, and it's pretty good. It's a good basic. I mean, all of us would have some experience with those little terrariums. I mean, it's one of those things that you get at some stage to just display 1 or 2 lizards in the house, and it's a perfect little enclosure, and they come in different sizes. It's a good setup, base setup. Oh, here we go, showing off the blueies. Are those new ones, Joe?
It's new just then. I had a litter born today.
Yeah.
And it was a Het T plus over a T plus, and she'd had 5 babies, and the first 5 came out as normal. So they're obviously all hets, but when your ratio should have been 50-50. And then, that they were all out by around 1 p.m. today. And then what are we now? Some 6 hours later, and we finally got a visual sixth. I just checked it then on the break, and here he is. He's good. He's been in there all day, so he's a little bit starved of oxygen. But
Okay.
yeah, there he is. So.
But do they if they starved of oxygen, do they pick up after they
Oh,
breathe?
mate, this guy tomorrow will be, or with, you can see he's starting to wriggle. You see he's crawling
Yeah.
around now. When I got him out the cage, you almost thought he was dead. But as I'm moving him round in my fingers and sort
Yeah.
of, just a little bit of a tickle here and
Oh,
there,
there
you
goes the
see,
tongue.
you can see him. He's
Livening up. Yeah.
he's livening up. You just need to get that oxygen into him because he's been sat at the back door since midday. And
Yeah. Tell me, is there a specific do females, when it's too hot like that, would that be a reason for them to stop the birthing and hold off, or is there a reason?
It might have been because I stuck my ugly ginger mug in there halfway through the day to see how she was going. Or,
She's got a cry.
How far up did you stick your ginger mug?
yeah, funny that. Or
And did you blow him in some oxygen?
yeah, he's going good now. Or I do sometimes think that the last 2 or 3 are harder to push out because there's less pressure, and
Yeah.
I
I would have latched onto that thing's head and started to mouth to mouth. I've done that with lizards before.
Oh yeah.
Better.
He's good now. He's going good now. I'll just keep.
So what is that visual for, Joe?
That's visual for T plus albino. So yeah, and he's het hyper. Oh, there's a bunch of het stuff going on there too. I hope for a little bit more visually, but you don't always get what you want. But this guy's the pick of the litter. So
is he got solid black eyes?
no, there's no anery there. I can see the outer ring is not black, but maybe on the camera there.
Yeah.
That's actually what I was aiming for in this litter, but it's not there. The anery isn't there. So, well, not in those 6 animals anyway. So
sorry, I'm asking a lot of questions. Did you suspect that she might have something still in her?
Yeah, that's why I just went and had a look then, because you often find with a blue tongue you'll get 80% of the litter out in the day. Sometimes 80% if you're lucky, or 70%, and then the next morning or later that night you'll get another critter, and then 2 weeks later you can get a stillborn or something like that. So they're notorious for not parting with the lot, if you know what I mean. A carpet generally parts with all of her eggs, but these guys do tend to retain a little bit here and there. You're going to give us a little tongue flicker, mate, just a
little kiss, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There it was.
There we go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's coming good.
So I guess part 2 of the show is to so you've started your license, or started your journey in reptile keeping. You're thrilled. You want to get your first lizard, first snake. So where do you go? What's the best start to do? And there's all these options. You can always go to a mate and they can get something that's caught in the bush, or you can start right and find a local breeder. And I guess there's different ways of I guess the best way to do it is to ask you guys. So Marty, how did you stay? Who was your first point of contact when you started keeping reptiles?
I think, so the first point of contact was I walked into a pet shop not knowing anything about reptiles and asking if I wanted to keep a green tree python. The bloke then picked up the phone and actually called Joe and said, nah, speak to this bloke. So I was actually fortunate enough that's how I actually met Joe, by just giving him a call on the phone and then going around to his house. And
that's very nice.
Yeah, being introduced to an albino Darwin. So that's where, and then he put me onto Simon Stone. So my recommendation is, a lot of newbies, what they do is still get online, join a Facebook page as they're doing, and a lot of people do the right thing and take recommendations on reputable breeders. Like, there's a lot of people that can breed a snake, but there's a lot of support that you can get if you do buy from someone who's reputable.
That could have, of course, turned out totally different. You could have gone into the shop and you could have been put into a totally wrong direction as well. And you were very...
I was very lucky. I've been burnt on purchasing fish and other animals before, where you spend a lot of money and it's definitely not something that you need or actually should get.
Yeah.
So if he had sold me, obviously I couldn't keep a green tree python anyway because I didn't have the right license.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was the first. I was fortunate enough. Joe was the first person, I think,
Yeah.
over 10 years ago now. So
Yeah, and Joe was
I knew that particular pet shop owner, and that's the backstory to that. So,
did you sell the lizards, or how did you know the shop owner, Joe? Was that?
I just, to be honest, I was only a couple of years into it myself, mainly. That was in the early days, and I'd only really got subadult animals and so on and so forth, and I wasn't breeding anything particularly, and I sent Marty on then to Simon Stone. That was in the Simon Stone domination era, and yourself, I guess. You were in your pomp. You were in your pomp, as it were, then, my niece.
Tell me, who was your first? Where did you start? Who was your first point of contact though with reptiles? That was in Australia, though. You started here, didn't you?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I kept reptiles in the UK too, but my first reptiles in Australia, I just wandered into a pet shop thinking I want to get a couple of lizards again, and because I used to keep bearded dragons, iguanas, and a couple of ball pythons in the UK. And once I got settled here, I sort of got that itch again, and I grabbed a couple of blue tongues from a keeper that it sort of exists on the internet forums today, called Brendan Dyer. He was a pet shop owner then, or a worker then, and sold me a couple of blue tongues. So
I guess
it went from there. Yeah.
I guess when the place to find. I mean, I remember coming to Australia when I got here. It was really the trading post was the best place to find. You land in the country, and really that's sort of you don't know anybody. That's really good way to meet people and find people that have a common interest. And I think to me it was the trading post in the good old days. You could find people selling reptiles and more, and normally the phone numbers were there. So I guess that's the best place to. That's many years ago now. I don't even think they're allowed to sell reptiles in the trading post anymore. But you could call around and you could make contact, and then of course through the Victorian Herb Society. That was a very good way to meet people when they had their meetings every 3 months. I think that's where I went the first time to really make contact with the president of the VHS, and through that network,
he's eating his first meal there. See him? No, hard
He's just half dead. Yeah. He's already. There we go. Oh, what is he eating? He's eating that stuff from Mr. Sinclair, or is that your own mix, Joe?
No, that's the placenta stuff. That's his afterbirth stuff. There, you see him?
Yeah, maybe to break bread with him and share a meal.
There. Can you see him swallowing still? Like he's off and going now. He's a lot different to what he was. Yeah.
He's exploring. Yeah.
Just so the view. Yeah, you see, swallowing the last bit.
Hold it in the camera. Yeah. There we go. Oh yeah. Oh, nice. There we go. Down the hatch. Yeah, he's all good.
There we go. Yeah. Just so the viewers can see, he's a goer. There we go.
Okay, good. That's good news. Okay, Darren, how did you? What was your first point of contact? I mean, you go a little bit further back than we do.
Yeah.
So who was your real first contact when it came to reptile keeping here, and who put you like the network that you had?
Okay, so we had the SA Herpetology group here in Adelaide, which was used to have the meetings down at the museum. So there was quite a few people in that group. Not everyone who kept stuff. It was more geared towards field trips and field study and that type of stuff. But there was a pet shop in Adelaide in Twin Street, and that was the only shop in Adelaide that sold anything apart from your normal run-of-the-mill pets, and they had reptiles in there. In fact, before that, they used to even sell exotic animals in there. But I'm talking now when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
So you could go in there. We used to call in there after school. So I used to have to get a bus into the city and then out to home from school, and we used to call in there, and that was where I got my first lizards from. But yeah, other than that, when the forums took off, you could make contact with people through the forums. You know, Brian Barnett was a big contact of mine, and he put me in touch with a lot of people that he knew. Yeah, it just went from there.
I guess the forums, a lot of us used to hang out on the forums. That was the best place to get your groove on in the day, you know, make some ridiculous post of hybridizing, and then you'd have the world come down on you. So I guess it shifted. Brent, who was your first point of contact here, or when you started looking at snakes?
APS forum in the good old days, and back then it was Dave Raptor's Reptiles. Who I tried to find someone local to me, and I found Dave, who was just the next suburb from where my business is, so nice and handy. Good local contact. But not long after that, it was just we're blessed in New South Wales with all the expos, so there was a Penrith Expo 5 minutes from home, so that was the first stop.
I guess that's a good point. I mean, I think you can have two types of interaction with reptiles the first time. You could meet the right. It's very important to meet the right person. I think because a lot of people meet the wrong type of reptile keeper, their first point of contact, and it leaves a terrible, a bad taste in their mouth, because you do get guys out there that will take advantage of somebody that's new to the hobby. And I think what gives you the longevity is meeting guys that are good guys and that are really interested in getting the next wave of reptile keepers, giving them the right information. And I think all of us, you'll find that the long-term reptile keepers were guys that had the right guidance when they just started. So it's very important to go. And as Brent says, expos are extremely a good reptile expo. And it's a pity you don't have that up in Queensland, because it could be so good for just youngsters because it's different speaking to somebody in person than it is talking online. And I know we all would agree with that. It's a different type of interaction. Chatting to a young person, Josh, I know you and Josh Pastuca, you and him, he gets a lot of information from you, and that would be the perfect type of guy to learn from, so I guess, Brent, the fact that you met Dave, that would be the perfect foundation reptile keeper to bounce your ideas off and get the right type of information from as well.
Absolute gift. Dave's a knowledgeable guy, very good with genetics, very good with husbandry, works in the area of medical, so taught me really, really good setup procedures for quarantine. And back then there wasn't so much of a virus risk like there is these days, but fast forward a few years when I'd become friends with Dave, and he was sort of researching all that stuff just as it was hitting the ground. He had information out there, telling me things that were coming, years before they got here. So very, very good guy to go. And I'm fortunate that I did land very well there. It's he got me off to a flying start, and then from there, found other guys. You were obviously instrumental back in the day of the big carpet man. So eventually I got onto you, and things just kicked on from there.
I guess it's all about it benefits you being honest and it's beneficial to be a good influence and provide people with the right information. Not just for sales and after, all of us, we all like to make money from something that we love. There's a lot of people that doesn't. There's a lot of people that judge people that make money from the animals. But what's wrong with? I've always been of the opinion, what's wrong with making money from something that you love to do? But on the other side, though, I think it's important to remember that it's a bigger picture thing as well. You need to grow the next group of people that can take on the industry when we move out. Like Simon Stone was, like Joe said, Simon Stone. Not everybody got along with Simon, but what he did for the industry was very important. A lot of the projects and stuff, that the influence, that the footprint that he left on the hobby.
He's a massive influence of mine, but I will add that, and I don't mean it to be contradictory to what everybody says, but I've dealt with, as you discussed, Josh Verstuca and and so on. I've dealt with quite a few people and attempted to set quite a few people on the way at different points. I think that there is also, keepers who have it and keepers who don't, and I think there's a lot of people that get into the game for the wrong reasons quite quickly.
Yeah.
And I think you do need, if you're going to be a keeper and a breeder, you need to be prepared to fail. And I remember going through all this with Marty, with some of his first carpets and some of his attempts at a couple of other things, which I don't believe were any fault of his own, although he blamed himself. But you need to stick to your guns and follow things through. And yes, you need good guidance, but you need a bit of passion, and you need to follow things through for a few years there.
Yeah, passion, patience, and persistence.
Yeah.
And I mean, over the years, the amount of times I've failed in something and thought about giving up. If I didn't have Dave Evans, Colin Ray, and Joe fall back on, have a chat to, and even just bounce ideas, I could have been long gone, but they just helped me, pick up. Like even this year, I had a great year. Bad year too, so it's been
you don't see everything online, do you?
No.
An old bird keeper said this to me recently when I bought some birds off him. It wasn't lost on me, obviously, because I've a little bit of experience with animals and animal breeding. But he just said, "Look, if you're not prepared to throw that money in the bin when you walk in and buy these birds, don't buy the birds."
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit rough to me. That came across a bit harsh, but that's also true in the animal world. That there needs to be a passion there, and there needs to be an acceptance that it doesn't always work. It's not a Coles Myer voucher, and these animals are what they are.
Oh, it's such a roller coaster of emotions. I mean, Brent, Darren, you know that. Like, you get your snakes together, you pair them, you see them lock, you see them ovulate, and then you're waiting for the eggs, and either they're slugs or they're not. Then you're waiting from the pip, and they're dead. Have you got your ratios? Have you got your? Gosh, I tell you what. And then we do it all again a few months later.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I don't mean to go over the top of that, but blue tongues are crazier again, because you'll get 2 or 3 out of every litter that really ain't going to survive. So you've got live animals there that are going to live for a week or so and often perish, and that's hard to take for some people,
Yeah. How many times have I told you, Brent, that when you there's always next year. That's probably you look at some stuff and you go, oh, there's next year, and then you just have to go, okay, well, it's going to take me another 365 days to get there, maybe.
If people take offence to that statement, though, Menes, they shouldn't be keeping animals. They should be looking forward to next year, not thinking, not thinking, oh shit, I've got to wait another year. They should be thinking, oh, I've got another year to keep these amazing animals.
And what am I going to change?
And what am I going to change? That's exactly right, Darren. That's the mindset, isn't it?
Well, you don't even have actually 300. You don't have a year, actually, is it? Like, by the time you get it's December, and we'll be pairing up.
Step. Yeah.
You just have to have that many reptiles of different types that there's always breeding season.
Yeah, that's it. So every month.
If you have a failure,
there's always next season. There's always next year.
Next month. Yeah.
Next. That's a way to do it. So, I guess that's important. Make sure you get in contact with the right people. Facebook's a great place to meet the right people, but it's hard now as well, because the guys that are really informed don't like posting on the internet anymore. And even pages that have got huge followings. I mean, there's it's really hard. It's actually there's an overflow of information. That the real experts. And I'm not saying we all know what our own capabilities are. But the guys we know the guys that know what we know the guys that are our peers and that know what they're talking about. But it's almost like that gets drowned out in social media, and it's really hard to find the right guy. So what would you guys? Who wants to go first? You know, what would you recommend? Where would be the right place to track somebody down in this mess of over information on the internet?
Well, I think one of the things with social media is at least you can, you can see the animals that people are putting up and are producing, and over a period of time, you can see that they've got that consistency, like all of the guys on here. I think that speaks volumes as well. That can guide you into who to approach.
Yeah, I guess it shouldn't be a rush. You shouldn't rush into it. Yeah? What were you saying, Marty? Sorry.
I was just going to say, social media is very hard. Like no different to Instagram or at Facebook. People only see what you want them to see.
Yeah.
So you don't I know what Darren's saying, and I agree. Like we can be consistent and show you what the quality of the animals we've got and producing and stuff like that. But some people are actually good at perceiving that they're something that they're not.
Yeah.
I don't if that's coming across right. So you don't know, as much as you want to trust who you're buying off, you actually have to ask the question, I think, online, who do you guys recommend?
Yeah.
You know, because judging by a Facebook page can be also.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that like filters, you know.
I like
great. Yeah, and or the beauty lights, Marty? Yeah.
I think you got to do your research, and you got to ask. You know, as much as Facebook is king, I guess that there's so much going on Facebook. You've got to talk to other keepers. You've got to talk to guys who bought animals and what experience they had with people, you know, buying and selling. You got to do your research. Just flying blind these days is going to land you into trouble, especially if you rush into things. People are very keen to jump very fast with reptiles. Gets very addictive. You know, I often get people coming, buying a snake, and 3 days later they're back. Oh, I want this, I want that. Have you got this? And you know, I probably my own worst enemy. I tell them slow down. You know, you can't buy 15 animals in the next 3 weeks and build an empire overnight. You know, it ends in tears straight away. You know,
and then 6 months later, those animals are all listed.
Yes, exactly, because they didn't make, you know, $45,000 in their first breeding season, and suddenly it's not for them and they're gone. You know, so.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that these animals can live for 20 to 30 years. You know, like, I mean, it's a really long-term commitment that you have to take up. You know, a lot of people rush into it. They might buy a normal coastal carpet just because they don't know that there's stuff like jags and super hypo jags and stuff like that around. Then they end up being stuck with a sibling. Let's use a simple silly example. Like I say, they get stuck with a sibling because they don't know that there's anything better, and then that animal gets listed or just get dumped in the local bush. I mean, that's the other problem that we're dealing with. So exactly what Brent says, you know, slow it down and then do your research, ask around.
I agree with Darren too, though. You look at the faith, you can sit back and just watch. I mean, a lot of good keepers don't even comment when they see questions asked on Facebook. They'll just sit back and watch because they don't want to be judged on what they say, because there's a lot of experts out there. So you'll also get the good guys not answering.
Yeah.
You know, I don't usually answer questions. I probably don't know what the answer is.
I don't get a lot of time to answer a lot online, but certainly I get a lot of people who message me directly, and I help a lot of people, you know, through questions directly. But answering stuff online sometimes these days, there's, like you say, there's so many experts out there that will tell you don't know what you're doing. And I'm like, that's cool. Let's just do it how you want to do it, you know. And people generally want information. They'll message and ask, and I'll give them the best information I can.
Yeah. I guess that's all that you can do at the end. You know, there's as many time wasters as serious hobbyists as well. You know, there's people that I just want to waste time these days.
Yep. And some people have too much time.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're the one that's seeking the information, or you're seeking to get into a particular species, make the effort to communicate with the people. You know, pick up the phone. You know, that's one thing. My eldest son Daniel's gone through. You know, once he decided that he wanted to specialise in green pythons, you know, he's reached out to your Russell Grants and your Michael Cermacs and all of those people, and he was conversing with them for ages before he got his first green python.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
I guess It's one that I tell you, I don't want to chat, but it's a lot of messages. I agree with you, Darren. I'd rather have a chat on the phone than a message.
Yep.
And of course, we all forget the good old trustworthy books. You know, it's something that's really underutilized these days. You know, like that's really where I started to learn about reptiles, was in reading books. Everything that I could find, I read. You know,
Yep.
I'd visit different libraries, because different libraries would have different books, and it wasn't always, there was no books around on captive husbandry when I started keeping reptiles. You know, so it was really historical books that gave you sort of an overview of where they occur, what their biology is, and you sort of interpreted. You read in between the lines, and you sort of, you know, there was the good old field guide, you know, where that gave you a bit of information about the scales and stuff. You know, most of us just skipped right through and try to see where the habitat is, the temperatures, average temperatures. In those days, we didn't have apps that gave you predictions of the week and graphs and monthly averages and stuff like that. You know, we didn't have that stuff. So you literally had to take books and just interpret the books. And I think we were better off keepers. You know, when you had to do that, when you had to search the information actively, when it wasn't just available, I think we were far better off for that. Sorry, we're getting all.
I think that goes back to the motivation piece. I think there's quite a few people out there that just look for all the information and will send one message and expect to be written a novel. You know, and I get that quite a bit, and it actually knocks me over quite a few. I want to get into that, but to go back to what you're saying, Menis, it's how about you go and read a novel rather than ask me to write you one.
Yeah,
and I think that I know that's a bit harsh, but I think that the pendulum has swung further to the former rather than the latter these days. You know.
Yeah.
People get upset, you know.
Yeah, I'm like, well, I don't
read a
have time
book and
to write
they
you a
get
novel.
they get enraged, you know.
Yeah.
See, the other thing you've got to tap into these days as well is podcasts. I mean, I know there's not a lot of Australian content when it comes to reptile podcasts, but there's some great ones out there that deal a lot with Australian reptiles, and you can learn a lot from them.
Yep.
Very true.
Yep.
Yeah,
I've put a fair bit of basic. Sorry, man.
I've never touched on a podcast. I really should.
Yeah.
I've never really. I forget there's podcasts out there.
The NPR podcast is really good.
Yeah. The guys over in America.
She dropped another baby. That's what I went to collect.
Oh.
So here you can see.
Hold on, I'll make it bigger, Joe.
A T plus there.
Yes.
You can see he's fired up now. That's the guy from earlier. And there's a het. So I've been bummed on the ratios, but there you can see the color contrast there. So a T plus and a het.
I'm sure you'll have. I'm sure you've got backup clutches as well. From that,
there's a couple more still to come, but it's a little bit of fun online, and that's literally as we speak. They were just born, so.
I'm more. I'll tell you what's excited me: zooming up on Joe to see that he actually does have eyebrows.
let's just make sure. Yeah, there he is.
There you can see how go again. And you can see how hot it was up here. Like, literally, I've got a river running off my forehead.
Yeah.
Oh fuck! Oh, I mean, sorry. Excuse me.
Oh, I don't care.
Thanks, Marty. We just lost our sponsor.
I've had ginger jokes my whole life. Yours is particularly tame.
Yeah. Well.
You've got a few. You've got a few on me. Don't worry, buddy.
I could. Yeah. That shiny spot on your forehead is.
It's very overexposed, but hey,
Joe likes to call me Andre Agassi when he's crying. So
Andre Agassi, that is
not far
very
wrong.
Good one, Joe.
Yeah, you find a picture.
For those of you that don't know who Andre Agassi is, I recommend you go pick up Wikipedia before a lot of people were born now. You know.
Yeah, before the 80s though, because he had heaps of hair back then.
Is he still married? He married Stephanie Graf, didn't he?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, after Brooke Shields, he married Steffi Graf.
But he had the mane.
Wild hair, yeah.
He shaved the mane off. Oh my God, he was like Bon Jovi, didn't he?
could cry when he lost too, just like Marty. You know,
Yeah.
that was my analogy.
Well,
Yeah.
or the other one he calls me is Uncle Fester.
Yeah, that's his life. Hang on, there's a few people here that's giving you guys shout out. So let me just, I think it's just important there. So Andrew Grealish says, the help of Joe and Marty has been a huge reason for me getting more enjoyment out of my reptiles again after having a slower couple of years due to the influx of overnight specialists and people judging other's animals rather than appreciating their own. You know, so that's a good shout out from Andrew Grealish.
Hey, Andrew. Yeah.
Hi, Andrew.
Yes, let me just have a look here. Carl Smith says, as I told Brent, I simply plan on doing some breeding, but currently just doing it for the fun. And I guess that's the important thing. You know, you need to start and enjoy it. You know, we all get so we all highly competitive. I know a lot of you, and we are competitive by nature. And I think there's a point where you need to, you get so competitive, and it happened to me. You get so competitive that you will break the law to be the best. And
you would.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know about that.
Yes, Brent.
You break the law on behalf of everybody else. But you need to get to a point where you can literally go back. You need to scale it. You need to get to a point where you're happy with what you have and just get back to that enjoyment of it. So I know, Marty, you've had you've had a few shitty clutches, but you showed me a photo of your incubator, and I'm like, look at all those eggs still in there. That's good times. There's still good times ahead.
Probably got another 100 to come, but yeah, it's like
Yes. So it's like it's not always like that clutch that we cut last night of Brent that was from possible head to a head. Sorry, we're going a little bit off. But that's the ups and downs of the industry. You one day you miss the possible head, and the next day you hit all the odds in a small clutch of 3. You get 3 of what you were looking double heads or double visuals.
Just touching on that, Manish, too, what Cole said, there's nothing wrong with a newbie or a young person having a pair of snakes and wanting to experience breeding. The internet, Facebook shoots these guys down to say, do you know that's a long-term commitment? They understand that, but give them the enjoyment of seeing a couple of heads pop out of an egg. Doesn't matter if it's a wild type or an albino. I think that's irreplaceable. It's invaluable to be able to put 2 animals together and actually breed some snakes, feed some snakes. Then they will work what to do with them. I mean, they don't have to have, the next 20 years set out for these little hatchings.
Yeah, I mean, I see, I visit, I see some of the beauty, I'm not in many groups these days, but, I occasionally see somebody that's having their first beauty clutch, and then you get people that shoot them down and go at them for, what are you going to do with those those normal beauties? You can't sell them. But that's not the point. If it's somebody that has a pair and they want their kids to experience the egg laying process, and I know it's got a mission to get rid of the babies, but they always beauties for some reason that
will go.
Or like people
and how about Manis? How about they might learn from the
Of
process
course.
of selling them too? You don't have to be a specialist. The moment you take the first step along a road, it's the internet. The internet can be a painful place for that.
I think it can be very, very. That's all. Again, a lot of people don't post or comment because you get shot down very, very quickly.
And there's a lot of people here.
There's a lot of idiots on there, so some of them do deserve to be shot down.
I'll just add something quickly to that, and that's. And it's something that pains me. A lot of people have the perception that all my results are fantastic. The reality is I won't post terrible results because the internet does not accept terrible results.
Yeah.
Some people will, but the internet is a terrible place for sharing poor results. I have lots of poor results, but I'll only share the good ones.
Yeah, I know.
I'd happily share the bad results, but the internet is not adult enough. Whatever the word is, it's just
mature.
it's not mature enough to accept all my results. So
Yeah.
I'll share the good ones, and that's it.
And we all experience it, and that's why all these newbies and all these young people, failure, trust me, we all do it. I mean, Brent, you know how much I've gone through, Manice. Joe, like, I know what Brent's gone through this season with a couple of good, ups and downs. It's
And I think it's important. You got to stay teachable. Everyone thinks, you're perfect. This is fantastic. You do this right. Everyone still has problems. You're dealing with live animals, and you've got to stay awake and stay teachable and learn. Like, I made some massive errors with the olives this year. Rookie error, thinking that's the ovulation done. A month later, I go, oh shit, that's the ovulation. Like, I read it totally wrong, inexperienced in that. So you got to take that information and come back again next year and learn from it and evolve. You're never the master. You just got to keep learning every year better things and look at what other people do. And if you can adapt something to the way you do it to do it better, just keep learning. You just can never stop learning.
Even as simple as eggs dying in the tub. Like, all my tubs are exactly the same.
Yeah.
And at the start, I was losing eggs. Well, that wasn't me. They were the eggs, because the rest of the tubs were doing fine. But here I am going, what am I doing? Well, I back and go,
It's but it's like I said to you, it's usually early clutches, sometimes iffy, and then late clutches.
Or if you spread males too far.
Yeah,
Well, that's a topic, Darren, that we spoke about the male, slugs, and like it was. Yeah, I still haven't worked out it. We haven't just like the male or the female. It's so hard.
Yeah,
because I had males only went over two guys. Sorry.
Let's leave this topic for another show. Let's just. I just wanted. There's a lot of appreciative people out there for you guys. I mean, it's not I've seen a couple of people mention Brent here. Joe, you've got them. You go through those. You should go through the comments afterwards, because there's quite a few people.
I can't see the comments. I'd like to answer them, but I can't see them.
Yeah, afterwards, you can find the. So Matthew Dwyer says, you're so glad to hear some of the conversation tonight. I've had some horrible results this year and was feeling quite gutted. It's given me a bit of a lift now. So that's good. I mean, this is what the show's all about.
I'll say that to Matt, because Matt speaks to me, and I don't always respond to every message and all that. But yeah, Matt, I know you sent me a message that said tonight was a classic. He said he had a white northern over a het, and I think he got one visual white and 8-9 hets in a 50-50. Well, there you go. I've just had that today with a T plus visual over a het. I've got 7 babies. She might have more in her, but at this point there's 6 hets and 1 visual. So that's comparable to what you were messaging me as a failure. It's not a failure. That's animals, mate. That's just the way it is. You can't change that.
Touching on that, Joe, too, I had 12 eggs. It meant to be 1 in 4 visuals. So I was meant to get 3 lots of visuals. I got 10 double hets and 2 visuals. It was like...
Yeah, and ironically, Marty, if you did, and I've done this over quite a few years, you'll find that same female 3 years later, if she's still breeding fit, then she'll go and turn that round on you, and your ratio will come out.
Swings and roundabouts, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bigger numbers always sorts out the ratios. The more you do, the more accurately they get back to those near perfect numbers. Both in results and both in sexes.
And the more relaxed as a keeper you get about your results, don't you? Yeah.
You have a shitty one, and then you go, that's cool. Next year, that one's going to blow it out of the park.
That's it.
There's Michelle Rumler says here as well. I started 6 years ago, and people like Joe, David Evans, Marty, Darren Whitaker, Steve, Russell Grant, and others have been amazing. Yeah, I mean, there's the good guys. There's a lot of good keepers out there. You just need to dig. You need to go ask the questions. It's like Marty said as well. You just merely have to literally just go through. Most of the guys that's been around for a while, they've got pages on Facebook. Some don't have pages, but the majority of people have sort of warmed up to the idea of having a Facebook page now. And really, I mean, I was just scrolling through Joe's, through Joe's Facebook page the other day just to see the sort of the timeline. It fascinates me where Joe, you should take the time one day and just go through your page right to where you start and just see where somebody came from and where they've ended up. And that is
maybe share a few of those initial Blue Tongue posts because
it's crazy.
There's a journey there. It's not a 5 minute. It's not a 5 minute thing. Hey.
Yeah, and people look at you guys and go, like you've got the best, the best but there was sacrifices in, there's a lot of time that gets sacrificed for large collections, and when I spoke to you earlier in the week, Joe, about doing a show tonight, you said to me, I've got a 39 or 40 degree day here. I'm running. All of us have had, if you've got large collections and there's a heat wave, especially Victoria's the same. That black. I remember my worst week was Black Friday that we had when they had the bushfires here.
Black Saturday.
Black Saturday, and it was a week in the high 40s. I think 46, 48. I literally had snakes die in racks in an air-conditioned room.
It's a disaster.
Keep it down.
Can be.
Yeah, and this is the stuff that you start with reptiles, and as Brent said, it's a bloody obsession. I do not know reptile keepers that just stick to one or two. That's very rare that reptile keepers just have one or two animals. If they are really passionate about reptiles, there's always 5, 6, then 10, and it's exponential. You'll have a clutch, and then you'll have 50, and then it goes 100. And it just keeps building up like that. So it really is, when you get into it, make sure you take the time to really research how you need to keep them, read as many books as you can, speak to as many keepers as you can. And usually it's like Josh Pastuka said something, ask around and find commonality in what is being suggested. And then, a lot of guys would say the same. If you ask 10 keepers, where can I get really nice blue tongues? I bet you 8 out of 10 would say Joe Ball. And that's not batting your back, Joe. That's something that I would know. And I can guarantee you that
always a bit of negativity out there, but that's animals and that's people too. But
not everybody likes everybody. Yeah,
but over the course of time, a decent keeper will have that 80% rule that will overlie. Yeah.
So you can't put on, Joe. Like you've got a lot of competition also, mate, out there. Every person you sell an animal to is your potential competition, isn't it? Really? So
yeah.
At the end of the day, the bigger picture, we do sell. You sell reptiles to your direct competition eventually, but it's not always. It's like I said, it's that original, it's initial passion, and then getting that and keeping that flame going. Not having the disaster of meeting somebody and the first experience you have is a sunshine virus in your collection. That happens. I'm selling my collection, and you go, geez, that's a bargain. You get somebody. I've been looking for this this snake for years. It's a quarter of the price, and then you bring it home, and it starts to roll its head around and gurgle, and it's got terrible.
It's a new mutation.
Hey, got a new
people selling hertz that aren't hertz or something like that. That can be heartbreaking for people that buy hatchies and grow them up to find out 3 years later they've been dudded on something. It's so much time and food to get an animal ready to breed and to not get what you're meant to get.
And Brent, that's such a tough one too, because as we're just discussing with ratios, you could be doing visual to het and still get, you know what I'm trying to say, like.
Yeah, you can get bad luck, but when you've got a decent sized clutch, very rare you're not going to get a visual in a pairing. It's I'm sure it's happened, but
carpets for sure. Yeah,
carpets. Yeah, when 15 eggs, no visuals, you've been stitched up. It's hard to get around that one.
The other good thing, sorry, a little bit off topic. So the other good way to find the right breeder is to go on the internet and have a handful of cash and just going, show me what you got.
There's a few that do that, isn't there?
Cash waiting.
The hundreds, and you're just doing this, and people start. There we go. We all have seen.
wallet.
You know?
I've only got a phone that taps on everything, so I can't even show you cash.
Yeah, it's a COVID. It's not COVID. It's not a COVID. It's a COVID risk these days to carry cash on you. I don't know how a lot of people get away. A lot of people with all that money under their mattresses. All the rodent breeders. So look, it's 9:30. We sort of said we were going to keep it to a sort of a time frame, and we did really well. I think that went really well. It didn't have any dropouts, nothing. The stream was solid, so I think we've taken some lessons away from this in comparison to the previous shows. So I just wanted to thank you guys. To take some time, I think the majority of comments was on KHP Reptiles and on the Carpet Python TV page. Go and have a look, and there's a bunch of people that shouted out. Everybody got mentioned. It's probably a good thread for people that are interested in getting reptiles. A lot of people are giving breeders shout outs there. The other way to do it as well, go into some of these big reptile keeping groups in Australia, and you just make a post and ask. I want to start with bearded dragons or blue tongues. Can anybody recommend breeders? And then you go through the list of people, and then if somebody was recommended 5 or 6 or 7 times out of a group of people, then usually that's a pretty good indication to who to contact. So
but important to do a little bit of research. I always find people message me with very bland, I'm looking for a new snake. Make some plans a little bit ahead. Think of things you like or what you want to work with, and say, I'm looking at getting into Antaresia. I like marbles. I like this. Who can you recommend? A lot of people message me about animals I don't keep or don't breed, and I can shoot them off to somebody else. But you got to have a little bit of an idea of what you're looking for, because a lot of breeders might breed a couple of hundred animals a year, and when you ask for a new animal, that's endless options.
And don't.
Brent, I'd second that. That's a massive point. I get a lot of people just going, "Oh, I want a blue tongue," and it's like, well,
and then
got 200.
Throw a number, and then they'll go, "Oh, no, nothing."
Yeah, well, it's.
Well, I've been looking for a snake in particular, Brent. I've been looking for this Chimera Jag. Have you seen one around?
Do you want male or female?
Oh, sexes doesn't matter at the moment.
Oh, see, that's the other one I love too. It's
gender
doesn't matter.
I'm gender neutral, mate.
There's no gender anymore. No gender anymore. It's law now.
Have you got anything fresh out of the egg, mate? I'm happy to take a fresh one.
Yeah. Fresh out, yeah. Chimera could be both. It could be a he/she building one.
Yeah.
So,
you've got a few breeder. All right.
Let me just see. But look, thank you for joining in, guys. Thanks, Darren. Thanks, Marty. Thanks, Joe. Again. Thanks, Brent. As usual, we'll do a few more. Keep an eye out on the pages for these egg cutting videos. That egg cutting video last night went nuts. Almost went viral with the amount of people that's watched that. And guys, have a great week. Keep safe, and we'll see you guys next month. So let me just quickly. So the next show, it's the first Sunday of every month for the next 12 months, and we'll see that a lot of people are saying that they got a lot of value out of this show tonight. I'll still come up with an idea for what we're discussing next week. Good luck with all the babies, guys, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
All right,
Hey, boys.
Hey, guys.
Cheers.